Now, many of you might freeze to preserve your food or even dehydrate, but have you tried canning? To me, the simplest canning is water bath canning. Now, this is the canning that we use when we're processing fruit and making jams and jellies and salsa and relishes. Now, the boiling water canning method is only for food that is high acid, and that means it has a pH value of 4.6 or lower. Now, to give you an idea, corn is low acid. It cannot be water bath canned. But peaches, high acid. They can be water bath canned. And what about tomatoes? Well, it kind of depends. So generally, recipes add some lemon juice to each jar to increase the acid. So it is okay to water bath can it. Now, I have a slide right here that will tell you some of the pH values of different fruits and vegetables. That way you'll know if what you're wanting to can is appropriate for water bath canning. Now, there's another type of canning, and that's called pressure canning. And that's using a real pressure canner made for canning. I have a video on that if you're interested. And this type of canning is used for low acid vegetables and meats, and it's just also a wonderful way to add things to your pantry. But you do have to have the right type of canner. So today I'm going to go over all the supplies you need for water bath canning, the actual process to water bath can, and then how to store your food. So let's go over the supplies you need. Well, of course, you need to have something to can in. Now, I have here the Ball stainless steel water bath canner, but in the past I have used a graniteware canner. And if you have a big enough pot, that's deep enough and that has a good tight lid, you can use that too. You don't have to buy a special pot just to do your water bath canning. Well, you need mason jars. These go by the name of Ball or Kerr, and they come in a variety of sizes. Let me show you a chart from Ball. You also need what they call the lids. This is what you put on top of that mason jar. And they come in two sizes, the wide mouth and the small mouth. And that is because the jars come in two sizes of mouths. I have both size jars, but if you're only going to get one size jar, I would advise just getting the wide mouth jar. Along with the lids, we have rings. And the rings get screwed onto the jar this way. Now, these rings are reusable. You can use them as many times as you want, but the lids, only once. And this is called a jar lifter, and I really recommend getting this. It makes things so much easier when you're taking things out of your really hot boiling water or even putting it in there. You want to have one of these jar lifters. It's really important that you don't put your filled jar into your boiling water, into your pan, and let this rest right in the bottom, because that amount of heat at the bottom, the whole thing could explode. Instead, you want to use a canning rack on the bottom. Some people put a cake pan on the bottom to put it over top. I've even heard of some people who put all these rings together with wire and put that on the bottom, so there's something for the jars to rest on. Just don't let the jars rest directly on the bottom. Now, you'll see when we're going through the canning process that you have to take out air bubbles before you put the lid on and seal it. There's a tool that's made. This is an air bubble tool, and you can just put it in the jar. I sometimes just use this, which is just a wooden kebab stick. Really, you can use anything. It's just advised that it's not made out of metal because that could chip the jar. Now, you're going to need a ladle so you can scoop things up and put it in the jar. So your regular soup ladle is just fine. So it's useful to have a funnel in your jar when you're ladling in contents. Now, this is a funnel made by Ball, but I have to admit, most of the time I just use this one. But you really do want a funnel. You're also going to want some toweling or a towel slightly moistened to wipe the edges of your jar before you put the lid on. So you need a way to label your jars so you know what's in them. I just use a black marker on my lid. Some people write with a marker on a piece of masking tape and put it on the jar, and some people have very fancy labels. Now you also need a timer. You might use your phone. I often use my microwave, or sometimes what I call my OK Google, because you are going to have to time your processing. It'll be 5 minutes, 10 minutes, 15 minutes, whatever, but you do need a way to keep time. Something else you should have in your supplies, good reference book. This is the Ball book. It is available usually wherever canning supplies are. I also have a Ball book, complete book of home preserving. It has 400 recipes, and the all-new book, Ball book of canning. Always read the process over again. It's really a great idea to do it every time before you start canning, just to remember the steps, and only use recipes that are accepted, published from something like this, or on the Georgia State Extension site, or your cooperative extension site. Anyway, a place you can trust, because you want to make sure your recipe has been tested for water bath canning and is safe. Now, you might need other supplies depending if you're making jams or jelly or pickling, but I'm not going to cover those here. Now, I mentioned the importance of following a tested recipe, and that is because there is something that can occur, and it's very, very rare, but it's called botulism. And that can happen because something wasn't sealed correct, or you're canning something that shouldn't be water bath canned. And botulism can actually kill, it can paralyze. It's very scary stuff. You may be able to tell when you open a jar, but often you can't smell it, you can't see it. So it is a silent killer. So make sure you use accepted recipes. Don't go based on what your grandma did, whatever. Things have changed. So make sure you're using something from a book such as this. When you're first starting out, don't go and buy 2 big bushels of tomatoes and start canning for your first time. Make it easier on yourself. Do some small batch canning and just can 2 or 3 jars worth of food. That's really an easier way to begin. So I'm just going to take you through a small batch. I only have, it's only going to make 3 jars of a special Cabernet spaghetti sauce. So this way I can show you it step by step. Now, I'm taking for granted you've already cooked everything you need for your sauce. You've made your sauce. You're just doing the canning now. First off, make sure everything is hygienic. Wash your hands frequently. Some people wear food safe gloves. I do not wear them, but it is a good idea. But make sure all your implements are clean and your work surface is clean. Now you're going to want to fill your canning pot up with enough water, so they'll be 1 to 2 inches above the top of your jars. But do remember that when you put the jars in, they will be filled and your water level will go higher. I also add just a little white vinegar, and that prevents my jars from getting cloudy. You only need to do that if you live in the country like I do and have hard water. If you're in the city, no need to add vinegar. So you only need to sterilize jars if you process for less than 10 minutes. So if you do need to sterilize your jars, just put them in boiling water for 10 minutes. So you have your sauce nice and warm. Now you're going to put it in your jar. Those big chunks of garlic and onion. So you have to make sure you have the right head space. And head space is from the top of what you filled your jar with to the lid you're putting on top. And it has to be whatever the recipe says. In this case, it's a 1/2 inch. Now you're going to want to use your debubbling tool. Make sure. There we go. Okay. And what that's doing is taking out any air bubbles, so you're going to have a good seal. So next you wipe your rim here with a little moistened towel just to make sure there's nothing on it. You want to get a good seal. And then you're ready to put on your lid. And then your ring. And this jar is kind of hot here. Let's see. And you just want to finger tighten it. That's all. Never use anything else. Well, I guess ball has a tool for it. But just finger tightening works out just great. And you're going to want to put all of your jars in your rack. And then it's time to put them in your canner. Now you have your canner at a nice rolling boil. Now you just put in your jars. And of course, I have many more jars to do when I'm canning, but I just want to show you with one jar what it takes. Then you're going to put your lid on. Get it back up to your rolling boil. And then, because it's a pint, you're going to process for 40 minutes. So you want to set a timer. Okay, Google, set a timer for 40 minutes.
40 minutes. Starting now.
Okay, Google, stop timer. So now we're going to want to turn off our stovetop and take off the lid. And then we're going to wait another 5 minutes. Now you're going to want to lift your jar out. And then you're going to want to let it rest for 12 hours to 24 hours. So you might hear raw pack, hot pack. What's the difference? Well, what we just did was hot pack. Our sauce was near the boiling point when we were putting it in our jar. It was hot packing. But there's also something called cold packing. Let's say you have a bunch of peaches, you slice them up and you put them in your jar, and then you pour a hot syrup over those peaches. The peaches were cold when you put them in, but you're topping them with a hot syrup. So that is called raw pack. Just to let you know the difference. So it's been 24 hours, and one of the things you can see is there's an indentation. It doesn't bump up anymore. That's one of the ways to see that something is sealed. Another way is, see, I'm just on the lid itself, I can lift it. That's a good seal. So that way I know my jars are vacuum sealed and ready to be stored. Oh no, one of my jars didn't seal. Hey, that sometimes happens. What you want to do is take the ring off your jar, take the lid off, inspect that lip. Make sure that there are no cracks in it, no chips, because that could be one of the reasons it didn't get a good seal. It could also be because you didn't allow the proper headspace. That is really important. But now you can just reheat the contents of that jar, put it back in the jar. I would put a new lid on it, put a ring on, and reprocess it. And hopefully it will be fine. If you can't get to reprocessing right now, you can put it in your refrigerator for up to 24 hours and then process. And if all else fails, you know, just make a meal the next day that's going to use whatever was in that jar, and you will be fine. It just sometimes happens. Now I also label them. So this would be so I'm just saying wine spaghetti sauce, $8.19. And I'll do that to both jars. It's really important because you might think, oh, I'll know what it is, but you might not. And it's really important to have your date on it. Some people put a lot number. Let's say you're making several batches. So they'll put like lot 1, lot 2, whatever, with the date. That is totally up to you. But always label your jars. Well, you labeled your jar, and now it's time to store them. And the best place is a place that is cool and dark. So the two things you don't want is light or heat to affect your contents of your jars. It's best to have it in an area between 50 and 70 degrees. And then people say, well, how long does it last? Well, you should really, what they say is eat it within 1 year. But that doesn't mean you can't eat it after 1 year generally. It just means some of the nutrition will be lost. So the best bet is to regularly rotate your canning inventory. I try to go at least every 3 months and inventory what are on my pantry shelves, what do I need to use up, and what do I need more of, so I know what I'm going to be canning that next 3 months. But it's really a good idea. You don't want to leave something on a shelf for 5 years, especially when you went through all the work to can it. You want to enjoy it. See how easy it is? It really isn't that hard to water bath can. And I have a lot of different water bath canning recipes located in a playlist. So if you click on the right hand upper corner, you can get to that playlist and you can see, I think it's almost 30 different recipes. Well, I hope you enjoyed this tutorial. And if you have any questions, please don't hesitate to comment below and I will try to answer them. As always, thank you so much for watching. This is Prepper Potpourri saying please subscribe, share the knowledge, and as always, thank you so much.